Through you, Mr. President, will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So the sponsor refuses to acknowledge that their budget actually supports the acknowledgement of man-made or human-induced climate change. But
Senator
I
Hoylman,
want
are
to
you on the
turn to
resolution?
another.
Senator Hoylman, are you on the resolution? Or?
Through you, Mr. President,
if the sponsor would continue to yield.
Through you, Mr. President, again, I would appreciate the senator not putting words in my mouth or actually putting forward something that is not something that I said. So if we could stick to the facts. As I said, we have included many vital environmental programs for clean air, clean water, reducing greenhouse gases, cleaning up the environment. Those are in here. Now, whether he wants to parse words on his side or not is his problem, but I will say that we are strong supporters of protecting the environment, and the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in our one-house budget resolution.
Senator Young has answered the question. Senator Hoylman, do you choose
Will the sponsor continue to yield?
To ask questions, or do you want to speak on the resolution?
Would the sponsor continue to yield?
No.
Senator Hoylman?
I perhaps have touched a nerve, but I'll continue on the bill, Mr. President.
On the resolution, Senator Hoylman.
Mr. President, would the sponsor yield to questions about another area, the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the sponsor. The Senate One House budget resolution delays implementation of the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, DERA as we called it, until 2018. Can the sponsor explain what the requirements of DERA are for the benefit of the chamber?
Through you, I don't have everything in front of me. I do know that there are ramifications. So, for example, vehicles, I believe, have to be retrofitted with very expensive systems that cost anywhere between $15,000 and $60,000. And one of the things that I would like to point out is that this would be on the private sector. However, under the governor's budget proposal, there is nothing that would address our state vehicles for DEC, for DOT, for the MTA, for all the state agencies. And so what I would think should happen, or what I would hope the governor would do at some point, is start to work on the state vehicle fleet.
Will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Through you, Mr. President, can the sponsor tell us when DERA was originally passed by this legislature?
Mr. President, it actually, I'm looking at my, my information, and it was 2009.
Would the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
I believe it was 2006. But can the sponsor tell us, Mr. President, through you, what the original implementation date for DERA was?
Through you, Mr. President, it was December 31st, 2010.
Through you, Mr. President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Is the sponsor aware that the EPA recognizes and warns that fine particulates and diesel exhaust pose a significant health risk and can aggravate a whole host of respiratory conditions, asthma, bronchitis, cause lung damage, and even premature death?
Yes.
Mr. President, would the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, is the sponsor familiar with the original legislation back in 2006? The fiscal impact of the bill was described on the sponsor's memo as follows. Any fiscal implications of retrofitting vehicles will be offset by savings and health costs attributable to reductions in airborne fine particulate matter and ozone. Is the sponsor familiar with that original memo?
No, I'm not. I don't have it in front of me. I don't have it available.
Would the sponsor continue to yield, Mr. President?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. Through you. Does the sponsor, now that we've established that that was the original memo, does the sponsor no longer agree with the assessment or does the sponsor feel that the negative health impacts caused by diesel emissions are secondary to the cost of implementing the law?
Through you, Mr. President, I don't have that report in front of me. I don't have that information in front of me. I would say, however, that I believe that we need to move ahead in working on clean air initiatives, and that's why we have some included in the state budget. At the same time, however, we should be realistic about implementing these types of initiatives. And again, as I said, I believe that the state should lead by example. For example, currently DOT has 847 vehicles still needing retrofits. That is a significant number. The MTA has 218 vehicles that are non-compliant. And as I said, there are several state agencies, DEC, DOT, Thruway, Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, that all have vehicles that are not retrofitted. So I believe that I would like to have the governor actually put forward initiatives to do so first, so that we can make progress in this issue.
Would the sponsor continue to yield?
Sponsor yields.
Through you, Mr. President, in terms of being realistic, is the sponsor aware that the Clean Air Task Force and a comprehensive analysis of health impacts of diesel emissions found that in Monroe County, the risk of cancer from diesel soot is 89 times higher than the EPA's acceptable level. In Suffolk County, it's 153 times higher than the EPA's acceptable risk level. In Nassau County, it's 263 times higher than the EPA's acceptable risk level. And most importantly to me, in Manhattan, where my Senate district is located, the average lifetime diesel soot cancer risk for a resident is 1 in 893, the worst in the entire country. Is the sponsor familiar with these facts?
Through you, Mr. President, I'm not familiar with what task force that is. If the senator could explain that.
It's the Clean Air Task Force. It was a comprehensive analysis of diesel emissions across the state of New York. It's an organization.
Okay, Senator Hoylman, you have the floor still.
Will the sponsor continue to yield?
Senator Young, do you continue to yield?
Through you, Mr. President, by taking these trucks off the road, it would have a negligible impact on emissions. And the other thing to point out is that there aren't enough retrofits available to do these trucks. And so it would have a severe economic impact because you'd have to take all these trucks off the road and you wouldn't be able to have the retrofits available to make them be in service.
On the bill, Mr. President.
Senator Hoylman on a resolution.
Mr. President, I think we've heard this afternoon that this bill, the Senate One House, actually, in fact, questions the validity of billions of measurements by scientific experts on the validity of man-made climate change. I heard the sponsor say, Mr. President, quote, "We believe there is climate change, but we have questions about the human component." That is counter to the vast majority of scientific evidence, and it causes me great concern to hear that coming from this conference this afternoon. I feel similarly about the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, a bill that this chamber has continued to delay, and the impact has continued to be extremely harmful to not just my constituents, but to constituents all across the state of New York. The 10th anniversary of the delay of DERA occurs today. Senator Marcellino originally sponsored the bill, and he, I'm sure, knows about the real-life consequences in his district. In 2010, it was found that delay of implementation of DERA has resulted in 179,000 workdays lost, over 39,000 asthma attacks, over 2,000 heart attacks, 1,159 premature deaths, and health impacts costing a total of nearly $9.6 billion. I say, Mr. President, that this is a measure that we cannot afford to delay further due to the health impacts, and I urge this chamber to embrace the scientific validity of human-induced climate change and as a result, support the governor's climate change mitigation and adaptation program to its full amount. So I'll be voting no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hamilton.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to talk on the one House bill, please.
Senator Hamilton on the resolution.
On the resolution, yes, education is a vital component to the viability of this state. We must educate our children and give them the resources they need to be successful young men and women in our great state of New York. This bill is not addressing the failing schools that we have throughout the state. We are called the Empire State, but our educational system is ranked 34th in the United States. That is something that is unacceptable. The Department of Education is not educating our kids. Only 20% of our young men and women of color are ready for college. I see nothing in this one House bill resolution on technology. Technology is the moving engine in this country and in the world, and we're not investing more money in STEM program. We're not putting more money in hiring teachers who can teach our kids how to code and computer technology. In my district, we've had 3 workshops already with young children on how to code, on how to be web designers, and just to avail themselves to technology and how it could be a step forward in living an American dream. Right now, with a coding degree, certificate rather, you can have a high school diploma and make $80,000 a year. In my district, I'm truly upset with some of the schools and the reading scores. In Public School 327, the reading scores are 7.4% of kids reading at grade level. In Public School 323, 10.3% of our children are reading at grade level. At Public School 165, 8.7% of the children are reading at grade level. In Public School 284, only 2.1% of the children are reading at grade level. That is criminal in this great country that we have one school where only 2.1% of the kids are reading at grade level. What future do they have if our educational system is not delivering the best that it could be? In Public School 280, 298, only 5.9% of our children are reading at grade level. So I'm concerned about the community schools and what we're going to do in the state of New York in this great chamber on making sure all kids have equal access to a quality education. Every child in this state should have equal access to quality education. No child should be left behind. All children should be moving together. So in this great chamber, the state Senate, it's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's a human issue for the viability of our young children in our great state. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like the sponsor to please yield to a question.
Senator Young, do you yield?
Sure, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. I'll be brief. But I just want to find out, Senator, the governor has allocated $100 million for our low-performing schools. In the Senate One House bill,
I'm sorry, for a local one.
the governor has, executive budget provided $100 million for community schools. And community schools provide wraparound resources as far as after-school programming, psychologists, psychiatrists, training for parents. And I want to know what can we do, or what can the Senate Republicans do to make sure that this money that has not been allocated can some way get back into the community schools. And I know that you mentioned that the money is going to be put into the foundation. Is the foundation?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President.
Yes.
So, as I stated previously, the community schools have not been taken out, but they're
Okay.
included under the foundation aid, so that if a local community, local school district wanted to create a community school, that ability still is there under our plan.
Yes, would the sponsor please get to a question? Thank you for that
Sponsor yields.
information. I just want to make sure that the children in our district do receive the funding. I just mentioned we have 6 schools where children only, the maximum 10% are reading at grade level, and only 2.1% is reading at grade level. And also, I want to make sure we have technology in our schools. We're hiring people from other countries to come into our state to work, but we don't have a strong technology component in our state so our children can compete for the jobs that are being televised on TV, as far as the Nano Research Center, as far as the Solar Panel Center. In my district, a lot of the kids who are being educated now cannot apply for these jobs.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. Senator, as you may recall, last year the voters of the state in a referendum approved the $2 billion Smart Schools Act, which is $2 billion in infrastructure for technology. And as you know, the people in this chamber passed the resolution so that we could have that referendum. So there is money there that has been passed, and basically what the city would have to do would be to apply for some of those funds to fund technology. But I agree with you, it's very important.
Thank you. May the sponsor please get to a question.
Sponsor yields.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator, for answering my questions. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Senator.
Senator Panapinto.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Will the sponsor yield for a question?
Sure.
Sponsor yields.
Mr. Chairman, the Senate resolution has language to provide money for nuclear plant closures. And as Senator Young knows and is well aware, Mr. Chairman, her district and mine are adversely affected by the closures of NRG coal plants. I'd like to know, why is it that the Senate One House bill doesn't include any money for those coal plant closures but accommodates nuclear closures?
So, through you, Mr. President, there are actually 2 separate issues there. So Senator Panapinto referenced funding for nuclear plants, and that isn't anything to do with the closure necessarily, just would allow it to be able to continue to operate. I think what you're referencing in regards to NRG is to have funding available to communities that are impacted by the closure of plants, power plants. And so in our language, we just say that fund would be increased.
Will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
I'd like to, where is that language in the One House resolution that the plant closure, the coal plant closures will be addressed?
Through you, Mr. President, it's actually included under local governments.
It is.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Mr. President, I have some questions for the sponsor on AIM funding. It looks from the One House resolution there is not a significant increase in AIM funding. I'd like to know if the Majority House took AIM funding into consideration in putting forth their One House budget resolution.
AIM. Through you, Mr. President, there is, Senator is correct, there's no increase in AIM, with the exception of the village per capita, which is a $2 million allocation.
Okay. Will the sponsor continue to yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Mr. President, I mean, the tax cap has been a popular but controversial issue. And I want to know from the sponsor if there was any consideration given to capital expenditures for municipalities across the state who are running into great difficulty with a property tax cap set at 0.12% in many municipalities.
President, the property tax cap has put the brakes on runaway property tax hikes in New York State. That's why it's so popular with taxpayers across the state. And there is nothing in our One House budget resolution along those lines to alter the property tax cap.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Senator Serrano.
All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I actually don't have any questions for the sponsor. I will just speak on the resolution.
Senator Serrano on the resolution.
And this is an issue that is very easy for everyone here in this chamber. It's one that has universal support, and that has to do with our state parks. Our state park system is the envy of any other states here in the nation. We have an amazing state park system, and it is supported in a very bipartisan manner in this chamber and as well as on the other side of the building. I recall back in 2009 when I was at that time chair of the committee that oversaw parks, there was a proposal that would seek to close about 91 state parks throughout the state of New York. And there was a major pushback by many members who were still here, who were still part of this chamber, and it was a really beautiful moment, I believe, for the Senate because it was one in which there was no partisan divide at all. We all agreed that our parks are extremely important. So we have Governor Cuomo, who has been an outspoken proponent of our state parks and has really done a great job to find additional funds for the many improvements that are needed. While I said earlier we have an amazing state park system, it's a very old one. It's aging. The infrastructure is in much need of repair. So the needed capital funds to make our parks not only viable but safe is one that I hoped would remain in the budget as it was proposed by the executive. However, in this resolution, I see an elimination of the $92.5 million that would have gone a long way for capital projects for our state parks. So I know that, again, we're still early on in the negotiating season, and I really hope that this money finds its way back into the enacted budget. I don't really need to explain to anyone here. I think we're all, I'd be, preaching to the converted. We all believe wholeheartedly how important our parks are, not only to recreational and exercise opportunities, but to the health of all New Yorkers, especially the youth in our community. So, unfortunately, with this elimination from the resolution, I'll be voting no, but I hope going forward, we will see a restoration of these funds. Thank you.
Senator Kruger.
Clarify on Senator's last point.
Sure.
As we know in the Senate, we strongly support our state parks. The reason that we took the executive proposal out as far as capital goes is that there is no detail as to how that money will be spent. And what we're basically saying to the governor is, we strongly support our parks. We want this capital funding to go forward, but at the same time, we need to know how the money is going to be spent. And we're very hopeful that the governor will cooperate and get that detail to us very shortly.
Thank you, Senator Young. Senator Kruger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think to close for my conference, I want to thank all of my colleagues for their contributions to the discussion today. I want to thank very much Senator Young for her strong support for a resolution that, frankly, doesn't really have that much to support it. So, good try, but I don't think you're actually convincing too many of us. I just want to go over a few of the things that make it so clear to me why people should be voting no today on this one House resolution. I suppose just to start, the discussion we just had about the New York Works funding for New York State parks. If, in fact, the governor's proposal didn't lay it out well enough, surely the right answer is lay out the details of how to spend the $92 million for our parks that they so woefully need our help. Don't say, we didn't think it was a really good answer, so we're cutting the money out for them. We're very concerned about rejecting the modified design build proposals for Penn Station and Javits. We're very concerned that while we are glad to see increases in public education funding, the concept that we are being told there will be some changes in the foundation aid formula, but we won't really know what it is until afterwards. We won't know whether high needs districts are actually going to see a reduction in compared to low needs districts. That is a serious concern for us. We are, as my colleague said, we certainly support increased funding for education and doing away with the GEA at this point in time. But we want the details of how that money is going to be spent. We're very concerned, frankly, that we would reject a continuation of mayoral control without any explanation about what would happen if mayoral control sunsetted after going through this exact exercise a year ago and eventually ending up with a one-year extension. We're very concerned that our colleagues saw fit to reduce oversight in PSC's proposal to review municipal and investor-owned utility rate requests. We are paying some of the highest energy rates in the country. We should be doing more oversight, more questioning, not less. We're concerned that we're sweeping RGGI, and then we're using the money for things that perhaps we shouldn't be subsidizing, particularly unclean energy. We're concerned that we are yet again pushing, I guess you're kicking the can of energy efficiency and diesel cleaning down the road. We've been kicking it down the road for too many years. My colleague, Senator Squadron, waxed poetic about all the things we're not doing with ethics reform. I think it's really hard for any of us to go home and explain to our constituents why we wouldn't be doing ethics reform this year now. As I say often to people, if we're not going to do things now, are we ever going to do them? I don't think so. And so to stand here today and say you're supporting a budget bill with none of the ethics reforms being called for, I just don't know how any of us could go home and explain that we voted yes on this without those things. I find it completely unacceptable that yet again we are not increasing AIM funding for our localities who are so desperately in need, even as more and more of our school districts end up falling into the high-risk categories because of the 2% cap. We have to reevaluate that action, but we certainly can't pretend it's all working fine. And we certainly can't pretend that applying a model to New York City of a 2% cap on its property taxes would do anything but continue the loss of revenue for the city of New York, which, for the record, sends more money to Albany than it gets back. But despite that, we are attempting to cut a radical amount out of state funding for the city of New York this year. Albany is also facing this problem in this package. And again, AIM funding, which desperately needs rational distribution and a significant increase, sees none here. We see a shift of new Medicaid cost growth to New York City, not every other locality, just New York City. And the argument, and well pointed out by my colleagues, this was the governor's proposal, simply stating you're going to cut funding for specific localities, but they'll figure it out, doesn't mean they figure it out. It just means you're cutting the money. We're very concerned, as you heard, about cutting $485 million out of the CUNY system. 500,000 low-income students struggling to get the higher education they need to be taxpayers, be our future. I can't imagine any justification for it. I truly can't imagine that my colleagues here on the floor want to argue it's because there are some anti-Semitic incidents. I was looking up racist incidents, anti-Semitic instances, rape cases on SUNY and CUNY campuses throughout our state. Bad things happen. If we chose to cut 30% of the college's budget every time an incident like that happened, I could guarantee you nothing but a worse outcome. And that's exactly what will happen for the CUNY system if this cut is allowed to take place. As my colleagues pointed out, many of us are so disturbed that yet again we're rejecting DREAM Act funding, which is a small amount of money that will have an enormous impact for young people who are just trying to get a college education so they can get good jobs in our communities. How can that be such an evil idea? I'm concerned that we're cutting $100 million out of affordable housing. I'm sorry, Mr. President?
Excuse me, can I have some order in the chamber, please? Thank you, Senator Kruger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very concerned that this bill resolution proposes cutting $100 million out of homeless housing and supportive housing, and another $50 million out of the support services for the same programs. I'm very concerned that yet again, people here seem to have an enormous problem with a tenant protection unit in the housing agency. What's a housing agency supposed to do? Protect people in housing. It's not radical, and yet here we constantly have to fight just to continue that program. There's so many things to be concerned about. I don't even know if everyone got raised or not. I raised the concerns about paid family leave. You say you support it, but then you have a whole section on if, ands, or buts. We're cutting the urban youth job tax credit by $50 million. We are rejecting, yet again, raise the age proposal in criminal justice reform for the second year in a row. Many of us understand why that is so important to the young people in the state, and yet again, we're rejecting this proposal. In revenue, we have some good things, I'll say that, and yet we're proposing to increase a tax deduction for college. Who would be opposed to that? But it starts at people who earn $100,000 and it goes up without a cap. That means we could be giving Donald Trump's family a new scholarship tax credit. Why would we be doing that? We could be giving people who go to Trump University a tax credit. It's even scarier, either side. So the concept of an uncapped new tax deduction or credit that starts at $100,000 and just keeps going up, please stop. Start lower, stop lower. Don't do it this way. Some of us have differing opinions on the educational income tax credit. Sorry, EITC, educational income tax credit. I personally don't like any of the proposals, but this proposal, as opposed to the governor's, would do away with the grants to low-income families, would allow LLCs to be able to take up to $1 million tax deductions. Why do we keep allowing LLCs to run the state of New York and take all of our tax money on top of everything else? It would allow charters back into the program. It would take the funding out of the poorest schools. It's a bad model of a bad proposal. To continue, we also we actually take New York City's debt refinancing money away as well. I'm not sure if that got included in the $870 million estimate from earlier in my discussion with my colleague. I really think when you're dramatically increasing gambling through fantasy sports and online poker, there should be a serious discussion. There should be debate. My colleague, Senator Bonasek, the chair of that committee, pointed out there was one hearing on one of the topics in his committee and one hearing in the assembly on one of the topics. I don't really think that meets my test, but thank you for pointing that out to me. We should be asking hard questions before we go down those roads in New York State. MTA and transportation bond money for roads, bridges, the MTA, rail. We all talk a good line, but you sort of get back to that point, where's the beef? There's not the actual money there. So we all say we're very concerned about this, but where's the beef? When are we going to finally actually address the real capital needs of roads, bridges, rail, the MTA's needs? I'm just checking to see what else I might have left out. Excuse me? The Valley Girl? I'm sorry, Mr. President, If through you, Mr. President,